Hey guys, my name is Chris and welcome back to the Modern Diver channel. Today I am excited to share with you guys the final edit of my cave diving expedition with Jill Heinerth. Jill is a Canadian explorer, cave diver, writer, photographer, and filmmaker. For over 3 decades she has had the privilege of diving all over the world and has been part of some major projects in the name of conservation, scientific research, and just general exploration. Her latest documentary is called Diving into the Darkness, and it helps highlight some of these major milestones throughout her career. In honor of this, I have the opportunity to collaborate with Jill Heinerth and join her on one of her most recent projects, which is mapping an underwater cave system in the Ottawa River. So without any hesitation, let's dive right into the expedition. Well guys, we did it. After driving a little over 450 kilometers across southern Ontario, we are in the town of Carleton Place. This is just outside of the Ottawa region, and we are checked into our hotel, which is going to be our base camp for the next few days as we get ready to cave dive in the Ottawa River with Jill Heinerth. The goal of our expedition is to help educate you guys on Ontario's largest known underwater cave and to help show you guys a unique ecosystem that most people have no idea even exists. Today was basically slated as a day for travel and to make sure we're well rested for tomorrow. We're leaving bright and early, so I'm going through my gear one more time tonight to make sure everything is here and in working order. Cave diving gives us the opportunity to see some amazing things underwater, but it's important to remember that it's also one of the most serious types of diving, and safety needs to be our #1 priority. That is why I'm being so meticulous with my dive equipment. This expedition might not have started until today, but it actually started a couple months ago when we started planning and getting ready for this trip. And cave diving really requires this level of attention to detail. So we're very excited for what we've planned and what we're going to be able to share with you guys. So make sure you guys are following along, and we'll see you in the morning. The first day of our cave diving expedition starts off bright and early, but I wake up ready to go, packing the last of my camera and dive equipment to then head down to the parking lot where Jill Heinerth is going to pick me up so we can head north to go cave diving in the Ottawa River. We're going to be diving about an hour northwest of the city of Ottawa, but before we go diving, we're going to go for a hike along the shoreline and give Jill a chance to introduce herself.
My name is Jill Heinerth. I'm a full-time underwater explorer and the explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. I've also taken on the role of honorary river keeper for the Ottawa River Keeper, which is a charitable organization that endeavors to teach people and share information about this incredible watershed. So here today, I'm going to show you the magic of the Ottawa River. So we're here on the banks of the Ottawa, or the Kitchissippi River, and this is the unceded territory of the Algonquin, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. And this was a really important river historically, pre-settlement. This has always been like a highway of the voyageurs and traders, filled with, bountiful food sources and great natural environments. But right here, we're also on top of a cave system. So beneath the Ottawa River, there's ribbons of networks of caves with multiple openings with water flowing in and water coming out, both under this part of the landscape and the islands and all the way over to the Quebec side of the river. It's an incredible place, and I like to think of the Ottawa River as Canada's 6th Great Lake, and in some ways one of the most important ones, because the watershed here is 1.6 times the watershed for Lake Superior, so that's significant. And there's a lot of really important stuff happening both in the river, but also specifically in the cave system, filtering the water. Natural organisms, filter feeding organisms, are filtering this water, sending it downstream towards the St. Lawrence to nourish a healthy environment in the St. Lawrence estuary and the oceans beyond. So I think this is a really important place. We're trapped between 2 dams, but we've got 140 kilometers of natural free-flowing river over rapids and white water, and it's really pretty healthy. It's very biodiverse and a great fish population, and here in the cave systems, something unseen anywhere else on the planet. This would be a little feeding spot, plus with the water in spring water levels, these would be much closer to the water. Yeah, so These would be the result of feeding. So mussels are eaten by muskrats and raccoons and porcupines and other animals. So this is a little brunch buffet here. In terms of species that I'm seeing, these are all the most common unionid freshwater mussel in the region. This is Elliptiocomplemata, and you'll see, 10 to 1 these mussels over other species in the cave. They're not endangered, they're quite bountiful, and they're fast movers, so they might even move like a meter or two in a day, so they have a little earthworm effect in the bottom of the river or in the cave where they kind of dig a bit of a trench and stir things up, and that provides more food kind of floating through the system. This region was really formed from the retreat of the last ice age and this great flood that would have come through this region, through the Ottawa Valley. And these caves are carved in limestone, so it's a very light colored, soft limestone that's eroded by the water. So literally the caves are carved by water, and you can see the scallops in the rock from this action. So water flows from higher areas of topography to lower areas, so it travels beneath the ground. And if it finds an area that it can erode away, like a softer layer of limestone or sand, it'll eat away at that and continue to take the easiest path to those lower altitudes, basically. Here in this little bay, we've actually got inflowing tunnels, so tunnels that are sucking water into the cave, and we've got outflowing tunnels, springs or resurgences where the water's coming out of the cave. Because there's multiple entrances around this peninsula and under these islands and under Alumet Island, it's a very complicated system in terms of flow. We always try and do the hardest work at the beginning of a dive and dive against the flow to return to the entrance with the flow. But in here, it can get very complicated. And so it takes a lot of dives. It took 15 years to survey 10.5 kilometers of passageways here. The first time I came to this spot, I paddled by kayak against the flow of the river. And it might not look like much, but it can be extremely fierce here. And I literally tied up my kayak on the other shore and I was free diving, swimming around. And I free dived down into the entrance here and quickly felt the pull of the flow, like yanking me into the cave. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And turning around, swimming out, thinking, okay, this is not a safe place to free dive. Like, A, you can't see, so it would be really easy to slip in under an overhead environment. But B, there's such strong currents. Like in my friend Dave Sawatsky's logbook, he reports a 14-knot current in one location. Obviously, that would not be swimmable. So it's a place that, although it's shallow, requires a lot of respect. In the springtime, this whole area would be flooded and underwater, so we'd be on river bottom here. And yet here, this is an entrance to the cave system, but at this point in the cave system, it's only 11 feet deep. So we're on this thin veneer of landscape on top of a multi-opening cave system right here. So we're coming up here on another entrance. So as you can see, the water's pretty brown, it's tannic. So that is caused by both the logs that are submerged underwater, sort of leftovers from the logging industry, as well as all the trees in the forest here in the swamp that are just soaking tannic acid, just like a tea bag, into the water. What's interesting though is that this brown water that has like low visibility, like 2 to 3 feet of visibility inside the cave, is actually a rich and healthy, vibrant ecosystem where if you follow the Ottawa River downstream to where it hooks up with the St. Lawrence River and draining the Great Lakes. If you go to the Great Lakes right now, it's quite barren. A lot of the issues caused by invasive species that have outcompeted the native species, where here we're fortunately free from most of those species. But it means that the brown water that's hard to see in is the healthy environment, and the clear water in Lake Ontario and the early St. Lawrence River is actually quite compromised. So we are right here. This is the only spot that you can actually drive to in this entire system. Although some of the exploration was done when there were some existing logging roads, they don't exist anymore. So you've got to trek through the bush, or you've got to swim against a really significant current to get to some of these openings. So there's sort of 3 channels, 2 on the Quebec side and then one that splits Ontario and Quebec. So this is all the Ottawa River. And the submerged passageways are in ancient Ordovician limestone and would have been carved under lower water levels and are continuing to be carved today. It took my friend 15 years to map the initial passageways. But when I first swam into it, it wasn't the cave itself that was the most interesting to me. It was what was living in it. It's unlike anything I've seen anywhere else on Earth. It is full of some of the richest, biodiversity that I've ever seen in a freshwater cave, or any cave for that matter. And I've been now on a 6-year journey to document everything that I'm seeing in the cave, working with a scientific partner from the Canadian Museum of Nature, Dr. Andre Martel. And he's not a cave diver, but I'm not a mussel specialist, and that's one of the key species that's in the cave here. So together, we can really do a lot of good scientific work. So right now I'm creating almost like an inventory of life within the cave, from the small, microscopic kind of stuff to larger things like damselfly nymphs, that insects that begin their life underwater in the cave system. So I'm trying to document everything that lives there and how they're all interconnected, who's eating what. None of these are cave adapted animals that we know of so far. They're all animals that come and go from the cave diving environment. But in this cave, what's super critical are the mussels, the natural native species that belong here. And these mussels are creating a filtration network, something that could never ever be replaced by any mechanical means. Each mussel is filter feeding 1 to 2 liters of water per hour, cleaning out PFAS chemicals, contaminants, many things, and creating a clean environment for the fish that they rely on for their reproductive cycle. So some of the species like this one, Lampsilus cardium, once a year she builds a lure that hangs out of her own flesh. Now she has no eyes and a brain, but she creates a little lure that has eye spots and tails, and it looks like a little minnow. And she flicks it and makes a vibration to attract a particular species of fish. And the fish will nip at the lure, and when it does, she sprays her young into the mouth of the fish. They latch onto the gill structures of the fish, suck the blood serum like a little vampire over time, and for a week or months travels with the fish, feeding on the fish's blood. But they're so small they don't harm the fish, and when they're big enough, they'll excrete a little enzyme and drop off into the silt and stay there for a couple of years before they reemerge as juveniles, to then live a life that could be 20, 40, or even 100 years or more, filtering 1 to 2 liters of water per hour. So an amazing ecosystem service. Some of the mussels have different lures, and they look like piano keys hanging out of the side of the shell. So they're quite incredible animals, and slowly I'm beginning to learn who lives there, where they live, in what environments, and how they're all interconnected. So it's a fun journey.
It is time to take you guys cave diving in the Ottawa River. Our dive today starts along the shoreline underneath this boat, where we're going to pass under a land bridge into a sinkhole, which then has a tunnel leading under the forest. If you were to look at a map of the Gervais Cave System, you can see it located right here. With the truck unloaded and our tanks and fins sitting along the shoreline, it was time to finish putting on our wetsuits, enter the water, set our dive computers, do our safety checks, and review our dive plan, all before entering the cave. The tannic water of the Ottawa River is a perfect example of why cave divers always need to maintain a continuous guideline leading outside of the cave. And the reduced visibility here means we need to take extra care to make sure that our primary and secondary tie-offs are secure, so in the event of a no-vis emergency, we are able to use that line to guide us safely out of the cave. With our lines secured, it was then time to push deeper and dive into the darkness. Our goal was to find the primary line that was installed during the initial survey work of this cave system. Once Jill located this line, she then is going to take our primary line and attach it to this so we can maintain that continuous guideline to the surface. At this stage, each diver then puts a non-directional personalized marker on the line, indicating that they are inside the cave, and only they are allowed to remove this, meaning that if we were to get separated, we can still see if whether or not the other person is still in the cave. Right away, the cave breaks into two directions, and Jill indicates that we are going to be taking the passage on the right. Cave diving is even darker than night diving because there is zero ambient light, and the tannic water of the Ottawa River absorbs our light, meaning that we need to stay at full alert to make sure that we are not getting lost and separated from our guideline. As we focus on pushing through the darkness and follow the line, we start to notice ambient light again. This means that we have entered the sinkhole and we need to just continue following the line until we reach the opposite end, where we will then enter the main passage of the cave. As we approach the other side of the sinkhole, we can start to feel the flow of water pushing against us, meaning that we are swimming upriver. This is how we're going to start our cave dive, so we exert the most energy at the start of our dive, and it will be easier to exit the cave because we will have the flow helping push us out. Upon reaching the other end, we once again pushed into the darkness, following the line deeper into the cave. This cave requires side mount because it is not very tall. The max height of the tunnel in this part of the cave is only about 4 to 6 feet. However, this cave is very wide, getting as wide as 30 to 60 feet in certain parts. The max depth of our dive was actually only 11 feet, and the water temperature was 75, so we didn't need to worry about decompression, but we did need to be careful of silt, because one wrong move can cause visibility to go to zero. And yet, in this incredibly hostile environment, hundreds of feet back in the cave, we start to see signs of life. Along the floor, we start to see large patches of freshwater sponges and mussels all intertwined, thriving together in complete darkness. This is extremely strange for freshwater sponges, so Jill works with laboratories across Canada and the US to take samples to help identify this species of sponge. It's important to note that Jill and these laboratories have acquired all the proper permits and training to be able to handle these potentially endangered species and scientifically catalog them. Throughout the dive, Jill pays close attention to the marine life we pass, and if she sees something interesting, she starts to take notes on things like species, size, health, population density, and she looks for abnormalities. She also has her camera ready to go to help better document anything interesting she sees underwater. After 60 minutes of exploring the cave, we start to see ambient light again. This is a sinkhole in the forest floor. At this point, Jill ties a new line and starts to work her way up the hole. At first, I hang back, making sure that she is completely clear before I attempt to follow her up the hole towards the surface. It's a wild experience basically crawling out of a puddle in the middle of the forest, but we took a minute to catch our breath, enjoy the scenery, ultimately before we went back down and started to make our way back to where we started. When cave divers turn around, they reverse roles, so it is now my turn to be diver 1 and guide the way out. Don't forget, we also have the current pushing behind us, so even though it took 60 minutes to get in, it only took us 20 minutes to get out. And ultimately, we knew we were at the end once we started to see the ambient light again from the opening. As we cleaned up our line, we were then greeted by a school of fish, making a perfect ending to an amazing 90-minute cave dive in the Ottawa River. Overall, this was an extremely fascinating dive, and I'm even more excited now to see what we see on our dives tomorrow. It's the second day of our Ottawa River cave diving expedition, but this morning we're loading 2 extra pieces of gear, which are DPVs or diver propulsion vehicles, because today we're going on an even bigger adventure. With the rest of our gear loaded, it was once again time to drive to the edge of the Ottawa River. As I get this DPV out of travel mode, I want to give a huge shout out to Dan's Dive Shop for lending me this Suex Expedition Grade DPV, because as you'll see, we were glad to have it when our adventure took an unexpected twist.
We're here on the banks of the Ottawa River at the same place where we dove yesterday, but we're not going to enter the cave here. We're actually going to use our DPVs, our underwater scooters, to go around the corner upstream. It helps us get through the flow because we're going to another entrance today that's got quite a different character, and we're really looking at the history of the river. There's incredible fossils that are extruded out of the walls and the ceiling, big fossils on the floor, and in the past I've actually found some some Indigenous pottery that's really important to learn about and conserve, so that the Indigenous people can tell their story pre-settlement. Because this part of the river used to be a bit of an Indigenous toll booth for people going upstream.
With the dive plan briefed, we then finished putting on our wetsuits and the rest of our expedition equipment and headed down to the water to follow the same procedures as yesterday, which is getting geared up along the shoreline and then taking the time to make sure we set our dive computers, review our dive plan, and do our safety checks. With our gear on and our diver propulsion vehicles ready to go, it was time to scooter the roughly 450 meters around the point. The Ottawa River water levels are quite low this time of year, so it can be really shallow when you're close to the shore. On top of this, you also have the tannic water of the Ottawa River reducing visibility. So, to avoid hitting rocks and not get lost, we are actually scootering very close to the surface, so we're able to keep an eye on where we're going. After scootering for about 10 minutes, we reached our destination and got ready to start our cave dive. Just like yesterday, we started off by doing a primary tie-off. Now, our DPVs are too big to take in the cave, so we leave them clipped outside the cave as we then push forward to do our secondary tie-off and enter the overhead environment. Now, as soon as I got underwater, I noticed visibility was less than it was yesterday, and there seemed to be a lot more silt. It didn't take long for Jill to give the thumbs up ending the dive, and when she got to the surface, she expressed her concern that the complete lack of flowing water has led to the buildup of deep silt, and she had some concerns that the passageway was either blocked from debris earlier in the year, or there could have been a potential cave-in. Ultimately, we decided it was better to scooter to an alternative cave entrance that was another 400 meters upstream. This entrance was actually in a small bay that we had hiked to the day before. However, the current of the Ottawa River was significantly stronger here, and Jill's scooter was no longer able to fight the current, so we actually had to use the Suex scooter to tow both me, her, and her scooter upriver to get us to the cave entrance. After traveling almost a kilometer upriver, we finally reached our cave entrance, and we could already feel the flow, so we didn't take any chances securing our DPVs, and we did both a primary and secondary tie-off for the line. Because we were directly over top of the cave, we had to drop straight down to do our secondary tie-off, and right away we realized there was a much stronger current than yesterday, and I noticed it was going to be a lot harder to film during this dive. We noticed the flow was less powerful near the bottom, so we stayed low, and in cave diving, sometimes you need to use the rocks to either pull and glide or push yourself forward if you are fighting a strong current. With the current, we took extra care to make sure that our tie-offs were secure, and we didn't actually know where the main survey line was, so for most of this dive, we were actually running our own line looking for it. Now, at this point, we had gotten away from the mouth of the cave, so the flow had become a lot more manageable. At this point, we were then able to start investigating our surroundings, and it didn't take long for us to find these sedimentary rock outcroppings on the roof. These are formed when organic material and sediment are compressed to form minerals, creating a fossil. Ultimately, when the limestone wears away, these will actually fall down from the ceiling. Most of these are from an ancient ocean, and in parts of the cave where rolling debris has sanded the sandstone smooth, you can actually see some of these fossils on full display. We continued to explore the cave, and Jill paid close attention to our surroundings, and at one point something caught her eye and she started to get quite excited. She pulled out her notepad and she wrote down that this is actually an endangered hickory nut mussel. We actually found a small cluster of them, and not far away we found these large patches dense with a variety of mussel species, showing how healthy this environment actually is. Keep in mind that these each are filtering up to 2 liters per hour. We didn't end up seeing any pottery on this dive, but we did find this old bottle from the early 1900s, and when we stood it up, the silt coming out of the bottle neck actually works as a great example to show you the level of flow we were dealing with. At this point, we were 60 minutes into the dive, so it was time to turn around and make our way out. I started to lead the way, and keep in mind we have the current behind us pushing us through the cave. We came across the occasional white suckerfish, and I will admit that the first one kind of freaked me out. As Jill rolled up the line and we reached our secondary tie-off, we could start to see the orange glow from the surface, marking the end of our second epic cave dive in the Ottawa River. We surfaced from the dive to take a minute to talk about what we saw and collect the DPVs, and then we started our roughly 1 kilometer scooter run back to shore. After almost 3 hours in the water, we returned from our adventure, marking the end of our cave diving expedition. Well, guys, there we go. That completes our cave diving expedition with Jill Heinerth in the Ottawa River. It's safe to say this was an amazing experience, and I feel very privileged to be able to join her on these types of dives. As mentioned, this entire collaboration was in honor of her newest documentary, Diving into the Darkness. This is now available to stream worldwide, so make sure you guys check it out if you want to learn more about Jill Heinerth and follow some of the amazing adventures that she's had over her career. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video.